May 4th started quietly enough. There were small agitations and marches, but nothing which the police could not control. Business officials, however, remained wary. They asked the governor for the state's militia to be posted on street corners to, quote, enforce order, unquote. The governor, Oglesby, refused. He felt armed troops in Chicago would only inflame the situation on the streets further. Back at the printing house of Arbeiterzeitung, Spies was approving printed flyers for that night's meeting. He demanded that the line, "Working men, arm yourselves and appear in full force," be struck from the flyers, as this would only give the police more reason to disturb their assembly. After a light supper, Spies headed for the Haymarket. Half a block away from the Haymarket, 176 police officers were mobilizing for battle at Captain Bonfield's request. He ordered plainclothes detectives to infiltrate the meeting and report back if speakers became, quote-unquote, incendiary. At 8:15 p.m., Spies arrived at the Haymarket. The turnout was nowhere near what was expected. Only 3,000-odd workers congregated around the square. Seeing the smaller crowd, Spies moved the meeting around the corner to DePlain Street. Albert Parsons was not present at the start of the meeting. He'd only just returned to Chicago that day from speaking to striking workers in Cincinnati. He did not approve of the meeting and was against the entire congregation, fearing police violence. Spies began the rally, clearly exhausted from the past few days of organizing, printing, and speaking. He made clear the meeting should be peaceful, and that they were there to protest the killings of the day before. Albert Parsons, who arrived with his wife and children, was noticed in the crowd by Spies and called forward to speak. Parsons began by citing the vast discontentment with which the working class lived. During his speech, Mayor Harrison was amongst the workers. He wanted them to know he was there, and he wanted to be the first one to know if the speakers were advocating for violence. The mayor walked to the police station during Parsons' speech and told Bonfield the speakers were, quote, tame, unquote. Bonfield agreed and said he would be standing down his men. The mayor returned to the Haymarket to hear Samuel Fieldin's speech. He warned of danger and powers arrayed against the working class, and then said, quote, keep your eye on the law. Throttle it. Kill it. Stop it. Do everything you can to wound it, to impede its progress, unquote. This was considered by plainclothes officers in the crowd to be incendiary enough to inform Bonfield. At this point, Albert Parsons and his family were on their way home, along with Mayor Harrison. The weather changed rapidly, and it began to rain. At 10:20 p.m., only about 500 people remained around the wagon on DePlain Street. Regardless, the police rushed in, revolvers and batons drawn. Captain William Ward, second in command to Bonfield, called out, quote, I command you, in the name of the people of the state of Illinois, to immediately and peaceably disperse, unquote. Fieldin protested, quote, but we are peaceable, unquote. After a tense moment, Fieldin said, quote, all right, we will go, unquote. Fieldin went to step down from the wagon when something unbelievable happened. A lit dynamite bomb was hurling through the air and into the throngs of the police. Lieutenant J.P. Stanton was a veteran of the Union Navy, and he recognized it right away, saying, quote, look out, boys, there is a shell, unquote. It exploded the moment it touched the ground with devastating effect, wounding at least 30 police officers who were packed around the street. August Spies was still atop the hay wagon, which was being used as an impromptu podium. He took cover after hearing the blast. Spies was under the assumption that the police were firing cannon into those assembled. Then, August Spies says the police began to unload, and, quote, everybody was running and people fell, struck by bullets, right and left, unquote. Many officers rushed past Spies, not to apprehend anarchists, but to seek shelter from the storm of friendly fire their co-workers were unknowingly delivering in the smoke-filled street. August and his brother Henry were in the middle of this whirlwind. A pistol-armed police officer attempted to kill Henry's spies. Henry grabbed the officer's gun, which was now discharged into his groin instead of his back. But he and August became separated. Albert Parsons was looking out the window of a local socialist bar called Zeff's when he saw the brilliant flash of light created by the dynamite bomb. Moments later, men came rushing into the bar to flee the deluge of gunfire. The 2-minute ordeal was over, but America's first Red Scare had just begun. By the end of the week, 7 of Chicago's police officers would be dead, alongside several workers killed by police bullets. The police would round up any and all associated with the bombings. Their prime suspects were August spies and Albert Parsons. The night of the bombing, Lucy argued passionately that her husband should flee the state. Albert refused at first. He did not want his friends and family to suffer the consequences, and regardless, he felt he did nothing wrong. In the end, he agreed with his wife and had to borrow $5 for the train ticket to Geneva, Illinois. Albert left his wife and children, but not before saying, quote, "Kiss me, Lucy. We do not know when we will meet again." Unquote. Following the unloading of many a pistol clip into anything that moved at Haymarket Square, the police retreated. There were dozens of wounded, and the cobblestone sidewalks of the near-modern city were slick with human blood and remains. On the workers' side, around 30 people were injured in the quote-unquote battle. One person became comatose for the rest of their life. 3 would die in total. The media was ravenous. The anarchists had advocated violence for so long, and now it had come to fruition. The speakers were as guilty as the bomb thrower. The Chicago Times said, quote, "Let us whip up these Slavic wolves back to the European dens from which they issue, or in some way exterminate them," unquote. Seemingly no one supported the socialists who had attempted to meet and protest peacefully. Even labor leaders like Samuel Gompers and Terence Powderly denounced the socialists. The latter said the accused were, quote, "a bunch of cowardly murderers, cutthroats and robbers known as anarchists, who sneak through the country like midnight assassins, stirring up the passions of ignorant foreigners," unquote. Within days, Arbeiterzeitung was raided by Chicago PD. The entire staff was arrested alongside August spies and Michael Schwab, a Bavarian immigrant and romance novel translator. Additionally, the paper's compositor, Adolf Fischer, was arrested, charged with murder, and held incommunicado. Lucy Parsons and Lizzie Holmes were in the process of editing the English-language paper Alarm when a similar raid occurred in that printing office. After being detained and questioned, Lucy was released from custody, in the hopes her movements would lead the police to Albert. When her husband failed to materialize, she was arrested, and her house was ransacked in front of her children. Albert Parsons was in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where he attempted to lay low with friends in the area. He shaved his signature beard and mustache and stopped dyeing his hair black. Oscar Neeb, assistant manager of the Arbeiterzeitung, was arrested as well. In his house, a rifle, pistol, sword, and leaflets were discovered, and he was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. May 6th, Samuel Fielden was arrested for speaking last at the Haymarket riot. Fielden was a burly Englishman who had only just escaped with his life from the Haymarket, suffering a bullet wound to his leg. He was arraigned with Schwab and spies. This mass crackdown on labor leaders broke the spine of the immigrant socialist movement in Chicago, which had been gaining significant steam. The New York Times wrote, quote, "There is hardly an anarchist in the city who does not tremble for fear of a visit from the police. Search warrants are no longer necessary," unquote. New schemes and plots were uncovered by the police every day, and private gun sales soared. The media fed this panic with little to no neutral observations. Even the beloved Mayor Harrison was not spared. He was held partially responsible for even allowing the anarchists to meet at all.